All right. Well, good evening, everyone. Welcome to our Facebook Live event, our weekly event here on Thursdays. I'm Coach Nancy, and I've got three of our other health coaches with us. We've got Coach Jen C. Hey, Jen. We've got Coach Annika.
Hi.
And we've got Coach Sandy.
Hello.
So you get four of us tonight, and we're really excited to be here. And we're tackling a topic that should really interest everybody. Subtle ways that people undermine their own weight loss efforts. And we're all victims of this. But what makes this especially challenging is that there's times that we're not even aware of it. Now, what sparked this idea for this event was an article in the Washington Post written by food columnist Ellie Krieger. She's pretty famous. And the title sort of says it all. There's no such thing as bad food. 4 terms that make dietitians cringe. Well, that got her attention. So Sandy, tell us a little bit more about this article.
Yeah, Nance, she's actually very well known writing about nutrition and health. But yeah, so this author, she basically reviews the results of an informal poll of registered dietitians, which revealed 4 phrases that if they could wave a magic wand, they would eliminate from the public dialogue about nutrition and weight management. And the bottom line of the article was that these terms just simply are not helpful. Nutrition and weight management. Or worse, make it even harder to approach weight management or weight loss as effectively as one would like to. So right off the bat, ladies, I want to get our audience involved here. So here's a question we're throwing out. Get ready. Put it in the comments, put your answers out there. Is there a term or phrase that you've run into with your weight management that you would just really like to eliminate or have it disappear? So think about those terms we commonly hear that you would just love to have be gone. So.
Yeah, and while people are commenting, I definitely want to welcome, we have several folks who have already joined us. Hey, Miss Deb, she was saying hello to me. She's in my Tuesday evening group, and we have Bob and Leslie, Patricia, Lucy, Miss Jennifer. She's also in one of my groups. So great to have you guys. We have Jean and James. So as you guys are hopping on, make sure to say hello. And Miss Lori, we'll see you tomorrow. Oh, we have lots of folks joining us already, Miss Sandy.
All righty. Well, we've just thrown out the question. We're talking about, you know, those subtle ways that just common phrases or words that we've come to just, you know, accept at face value, but how they can undermine our weight management efforts. And I'm going to repeat the question, and then maybe we'll grease the wheels a little bit with kind of our own thoughts on this, ladies. But is there a term or phrase that you've run into with your weight management that you would like to just eliminate?
Or that you say yourself, if you think about it.
Yeah, I'll go. So in our household, our F word is fat. Like, I absolutely cannot stand that word, fat. It just, I wish it could be eliminated because it's such a derogatory and negative, you know, there's nothing positive about it. So that would be mine that I wish would be poof, gone, if we could.
Yeah. How about I cheated?
Oh, yeah.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that just sounds,
yeah.
What does that mean? You know, so it's, again, it's a negative feeling. I was not a good person or whatever. I cheated on my diet or whatever. So what are we hearing? Anybody?
Yeah, I was just gonna check.
Oh, here's Bob's got one. He's saying, I hate it when a dietitian says I have to be willing to feel hungry to lose weight. Ouch.
Yeah.
A diet, even the word diet, Lisa says.
Yeah, Mari is with you. Cheat. So the term cheat, she dislikes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Annika, do you have a word that?
Well, another, I think one that we talk about a lot is willpower, you know, relying on willpower to white knuckle through it, and kind of along with what Bob said, staying hungry to lose weight, you know, and that's what we don't want to do.
Yeah, I mean, you know, if you have to like learn to be hungry all the time, how helpful is that going to be? How depriving does that feel, right?
How long can you stay on that?
Right.
Another one that when I hear clients say this, I correct them because I feel like lazy. So lazy is the word. And it's because it's not that we're lazy. We just haven't figured out how to, because we all have great reasons, and it's not lazy. It's just, we haven't figured out how to plug it in or make it happen. And so I hate it when folks talk about, I'm just so lazy. And I'm like, no, you're not. No, you're not. You just haven't figured how to do that yet.
Yeah, that's a really good one, Jen.
There's Leslie said, you ate potatoes and bananas? Never allowed.
Right.
Don't cheat.
Don't cheat.
Do we discriminate against fruits and vegetables?
Yeah.
Right.
I love the advice to well, you can eat everything, just just eat a little bit of everything.
Mhm.
Right?
Yeah.
That works really well for most people.
No, not for me.
No.
I'm being a little sarcastic here.
Yeah. Some other folks have joined us. Hey, Dara, welcome. Lisa. So yeah, a lot of folks are on with us. So Nancy, remind us what we're talking about here.
Yes.
That article.
So we're looking at an article from the Washington Post written by Ellie Krieger. And basically, after she polled several dietitians, they came up with 4 terms that they feel make them cringe, that they would like to eliminate from the English language. And we're going to be talking about those 4 terms now. So, but just in general about the article, there's a couple of reasons why we like it. And the first one is, as the author points out, words matter, which is what we started talking about. And the words we use can often shape attitudes over time. So each phrase that we'll cover here carries with it some judgment that when you really analyze it, it isn't helpful and it isn't productive.
No.
And what's another thing that we don't like about this article, Jen?
Yeah, and I know my second point of why we like this article, I just wanted to share, Bob's example, because it kind of hits on this point about the emotional aspect of it. So when I have a slip, it means that I don't really want to lose weight. And so it's like that's such an emotional, I don't want it hard enough, but we all have slips. But another thing about this article and that I love about HMR is how empirical we are. And that's important because weight loss and managing your weight can be so emotional at times, sometimes all the time. It can be just an emotional roller coaster, and it can really cloud our thinking when we're emotional, whether it's feeling guilty or we're frustrated. It can just turn into such a negative. And the terms they discuss in this article are very emotionally based, very heavy. Like when we go through these examples, I think you will find kind of the first thing that comes to your mind is not a good feeling when we're talking about this. And again, that can lead us down a rabbit hole to just further have us go off track. And it's not productive at all. So that's one big point that I love about this article, and also how HMR, we try to take the feelings out of it. We can acknowledge the feelings, but it's empirical. It's about the data and what we can do.
Yeah, so by being more aware of these terms and others like them, we're hoping that this conversation can help all of us judge ourselves less and catch ourselves quickly when we get caught up in negative self-talk. There's really a purpose to this conversation tonight. And really doing that can help us stay in action, help us get back on track if we get off, and not give up when things don't go as planned, because that is going to happen. It happens to all of us. It just is part of life. So,
if you guys are just joining us, we are talking about the different ways we can unintentionally undermine our own weight loss and weight management efforts. And we're reviewing an article from the Washington Post that talks about 4 terms related to food that make registered dietitians cringe, because these terms can cause us to be really hard on ourselves. So let's see who else has joined us.
Lots
here.
of folks.
Yeah.
We have
Steve.
Annalise. Go ahead, Sandy.
I was just gonna say Steve from Orange County, Southern California. Welcome. Pam, one of our
Pam.
regulars. Yep. Who else we got?
Deborah.
Deborah, who mentioned moderation can be a dirty word.
Yeah, yeah.
Right. Yeah,
Great.
we have, I hope I'm saying it right, Elena and Bonnie and Jennifer from Kentucky.
Woohoo.
Not too
Coach
far.
Jenny.
Yeah, Coach
Yeah.
J.A. Yep.
Kathleen.
Yep. A lot of folks.
And Dara. I know she's on. So I know she mentioned she was going to be joining us. Hey, Miss Dara.
Yeah, she said bananas have too much sugar. That's one she hears all the time. So,
Right. Yeah.
all right. So great. So let's get into this. Let's start reviewing the terms from the article. So the first one is good food, bad food.
Mhm.
You know what you can translate into, I had a good day, I had a bad day, I ate good, I ate bad, whatever you want to say. Then this is a phrase, let's face it, we use it all the time, right? It just
Yeah.
sort of slips out without even thinking about it. So for those of you in the audience, I know we're like having you really think for a minute, but how might these words be a problem for you? If you're using the words good food, bad food,
Mhm.
it may be a hard question, but think about it. How might this be hard for you? And meanwhile, coaches, just let's just throw out some foods that you would put into those two categories. And again, this is just to kind of get the wheels turning here. So, as you think about, quote, good food or bad food, what are some foods that come to mind?
Certainly veggies and fruits.
And where would you put those?
Good.
All right, good food.
Except for
veggies,
bananas. No, I'm just kidding.
including bananas.
Including bananas, right. Yeah.
Although some people would call that a bad food, right?
And potatoes. Yep.
Potatoes a bad food, corn's a bad food. I mean, you can go either way.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
Annika, give us a couple of examples that you're thinking of for good and bad.
For bad foods, comes to mind is fast food, pizza, fries, cookies, chips, all the really high calorie, high fat foods.
Yep.
Yeah, I had to say my kryptonite is those little white powdered donuts. I would put those in the bad category, so because they're higher in calories. So I think of when I hear bad and good, it's, comes down to calories for me. And, the higher the calories,
Yeah.
All right, so are we hearing from anybody as to how these words might be a problem to you, this idea of good food, bad food?
Yeah, so Steve, he was just saying his RD calls them medicine versus poison. So even more extreme, LOL.
Wow, that's really intense.
Wow.
Okay.
Yeah.
Kathleen says, if I eat bad food, I must be bad.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's a common one, right? We attach, we make it personal, right? It's a food, but we internalize how it defines us if we eat it.
Yeah.
And in the
Common.
past, when you eat bad foods, isn't it like you feel like you have to punish yourself? I know in the past, if I felt like I was doing something bad, I might as well just really go for it and, or punish myself by doing all kinds of physical activity. So feeling bad, you feel like you should have some kind of a punishment, which is never a good feeling.
Yeah, I think
Pam's-
it's really, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Pam says the dreaded donuts.
Yeah,
Bad
right.
food.
Yeah.
Like if I like it, it must be bad for me, is what Bob says.
Mhm.
Oh, I know, that's sad, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like every food I like is bad. Annika, what were you going to say?
I was just going to say, I think it's really important to take away the moral value of food. I think when we call them bad or forbidden, we're really making a negative judgment on ourselves when we do have those foods, which, can just lead to, again, a lot of negative self-talk, which we shouldn't put on ourselves.
Right. I mean, that really is the bottom line in this whole thing, is that it ultimately translates into internalizing that we're good and bad, right? And you know, for some it can be, well, I'm having a bad day, I might as well just keep going, you know, right? And it can lead to a series of bad, quote, bad days, because that's how you called it. Or Jen, as you said, it's like, all right, now I'm going to punish myself, you know, and I'm going to just like make myself sick with a lot of physical activity.
Or not
so
eat, or, you know,
yeah, I mean, whatever, it just, it's negative, and it just leads you to kind of want to, again, it's easy to want to give up at that point and not keep going. So really our recommendation here, as it relates certainly to your weight management, is to replace those words good and bad. And it, you know, sometimes it's a discipline, because it's so comes out of our mouths really easily. You notice, you know, and you're not even thinking about it all the time. This is really, I think, one of the subtle ones. But really try to start thinking about low calorie, high calorie, lower calorie, higher calorie. That is a huge step toward being empirical and more objective. And that can really help. So, you know, donuts are 100 calories an ounce.
Right.
Cookies are 125 an ounce. Chips are 150 calories an ounce. That's the calories. So they are a higher calorie food. Apples, 15 calories an ounce. Chicken, 50 calories an ounce. Those are lower calorie foods. And really, you know, even I had a high calorie day today. I know that I'm going to need to problem solve a couple of low calorie days to help offset that. That has you working on a plan, as opposed to just the emotional judgment of yourself and almost really just not being able to move. Just, you know, it's tough to stay in action in those cases. So,
yeah, and it's just something to solve. It's like something in our control that we can solve moving forward.
Yeah. And again, you know, and again, we'll say this a few times, but the goal of certainly phase 2, long-term weight management, is not to never eat high calorie foods, right? I mean, there are foods that everybody loves. The trick is, you know, the reality is you can't eat high calorie foods all the time in high quantities, because then you're eating too many calories to manage the weight that you want to be. So you really do need to also focus on low calories, probably the majority of the time. And, you know, ultimately the goal will be to kind of choose your treats. So anyway, high calorie, low calorie, try to kind of wash good and bad out of your vocabulary. All right.
Yeah, and I think, Nancy, this is really landing with a lot of folks, and just instead of just a different perspective with that. So I think people are really liking that change in the terminology, because it does impact our actions, the negativity. It can lead to more feeling bad.
Yeah. And I mean, there's no purpose in that, Bob. If I can share what you said, if I had eaten, you know, and this sounds like something that someone said to you, well, if I eaten good food, I wouldn't have type 2 diabetes. I really hate hearing that. Well, that does nothing to help you. Nothing. All it does is just, you know,
judgment. It's
judgmental to you, and it does nothing to help you, you know, work on managing your weight and your calories. It's just, it's useless. It's not productive. So, all right. So hopefully we're going to wipe these out. And if we can't, you know, at least get them out of our vocabulary for ourselves, and hopefully start training other people to that as well. All right. So that was good food, bad food. Sandy, what's the next term in the article?
So the next term we're looking at from this Washington Post article that we're kind of expanding on tonight is clean eating. So we need to acknowledge a point that was made in the article. The original idea behind clean eating had some real merits. And it was, I'll just quote the article, eat food as close as possible to its original state and its most nutritious form. So that was kind of the original idea behind clean eating.
Right.
Okay, but there are 3 ways that using this term just isn't helpful. So we're going to unpack that a little bit, and be sure to comment along the way as we are kind of talking about clean eating. Jen, what would you say?
Yeah, I think without knowing that definition and just kind of hearing it as, in our culture, you can almost make your own definition of what that means. So it's not clear really what exactly you're going to be doing if you're eating clean. So, so many different definitions, so many different interpretations of that. And even within the definition, you could interpret it in different ways. So it's just not clear. So it would be hard to follow, I would think.
One thing I will just say on that, I've read several definitions and they've just kind of morphed from one to the next. And I'll just hit on one thing I read, organic. Organic has a lot of different meanings to different people, and there's a lot of assumptions in that word that if it's organic, it must be clean. But yet, even organic foods, a lot of them are pesticides are used on them. And, it might be different types of pesticides, but so is organic fruits and vegetables. Are they clean?
Or gluten-free?
I don't think so.
Or different things.
Not by this definition. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. So we're talking about 3 ways that using the term clean eating isn't helpful. Annika, what would you say?
I think with clean eating, it can also be interpreted as banning entire food groups, which can ultimately end up compromising your nutrition. If you take whole grains, for example, many of them are processed in some way or another, but they're a really important part of a balanced diet due to the variety of nutrients that it provides. So I think it can be very problematic in that way, cutting whole food groups out of your diet that could be beneficial.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and then I'll come back with that same thing. It sounds judgy, doesn't it? Clean eating. Again, it really encourages the idea, what's the opposite of clean eating? Dirty eating? I mean, again, that feels really good. Well, I'm eating dirty today. Great. And again, so we're back to judgments. And again, it's not productive.
Right. Yeah. Well, let's not throw the baby out with the bathwater. There's certainly real benefit in eating more whole and minimally processed foods for sure.
Yes.
But not in fearing other foods that are actually nutritious.
Right.
So back to our first point about different definitions for what's considered clean that Jen was just talking about. We're going to throw a quiz at you folks. So get ready. Pop quiz. Sorry, we didn't tell you to study ahead of time for it. But get ready to comment.
The kids are back to school and so are you.
Yep.
That's right. Okay. So, pasteurized skim milk, clean? Yes or no? Let's see it in the comments. Is pasteurized skim milk clean? Yes or no? Yes, it's clean. No, it's not. I'm watching the comments here. Adrian is saying no. Steve disagrees and says yes.
Oh, I love this. This is great.
Yep.
No.
Steve is yes. Yep. And as you're writing, I know this isn't part of the quiz, but maybe why? Like, why are you putting your answer no or yes? So Leslie, no. Candace, no. Lisa, no. So I think overall people would say no.
Yeah. And there's no wrong answers here, by the way.
Yep. No wrong answers.
It's your
Lori,
own
yes.
interpretation of clean eating. Yeah.
All right.
Right.
Let's move on to the next one. See what, so I think we got some yeses and some nos, which not surprising, right?
Right. Yeah. It's confusing. Okay. Ready for the next one? Number 2.
Okay.
Maybe.
Well, we'll wait.
Maybe if it's coming.
Maybe.
Why isn't it
Keeping you on the edge of your seats.
There we go.
There it is.
Okay.
Unsweetened applesauce. Clean Yes or no? Remember the definition we're working with here.
Mhm.
Eating foods as close to their original state. Let's see what folks are saying.
Yeah, so unsweetened applesauce. So we still have some folks talking about the skim milk. So the
We got Adrian
pasteurized.
saying yes, Lori,
Mhm.
no.
Yep.
2 no's and a yes.
Okay.
Mhm.
So no, it's not clean is what we're seeing. Maybe if you make it.
Poor Susan's going, maybe.
I don't know. Oh, maybe if you
Remember-
make it yourself.
But
Yeah.
she's like, kind of trying to skirt both of them here.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Well, I think we had another visual for the unsweetened applesauce. Maybe that would help. So
Yeah.
maybe if you can take down the slide, Jen, and
Yep.
we'll show 2 different states.
Mhm.
All right, here we
Unsweetened
go.
Applesauce.
And I have an
Mhm.
apple.
Mhm.
So is the applesauce clean according to the original definition of as close as possible to its original state?
Or
You
we
be
have
the
the apple.
judge.
All right.
So let's see. So Steve says, yes, mashing pureeing doesn't take it far from natural state. And so,
All
okay,
right.
Yeah. Mixed bag there.
All right.
Mhm.
Last one.
last one. Hopefully this one will go faster. Let's see. Nope. Okay,
All right, whole grain.
whole grain bread.
Whole grain bread.
Clean
Clean
or
not?
clean?
Yes or no? I think we may be together on this one, potentially by the definition, maybe. So
Well-
Susan says, nope.
As close as possible to its natural state.
Anybody
Yeah.
out there eating wheat stalks?
I was like, yeah, no, that's the natural state. Mm-mm.
Looks like we're getting a bunch of no's.
Mm-hmm. Pam,
And-
no. Yeah, I was thinking we may be on all the same page as we kind of cleared up the definition, whole grain bread. A lot of
Yeah,
no's.
right.
Mm-hmm.
This is
Well,
great. All right. Well, again, appreciate everybody playing with us and taking the quiz. So let's kind of step back and process this a little bit. And again, there really were no wrong answers
We
because,
all passed.
whether it's clean or not really is based on the definition you're using. That's the whole point of this thing is it's not like really clear cut
Mm-hmm.
what is and what isn't. So Jen, let's start with you and your thoughts on pasteurized skim milk.
So again, like you were talking about, if it's going to fall under clean, then it's as close as possible to its original state. And so I would assume that you wouldn't consider it clean. But for me, the pasteurization removes the microorganisms that cause illness. So it's actually, I would think, a lot safer to have the pasteurized versus not. So for me, I would probably not have that. I would want to have the skim milk that's pasteurized. So for a personal choice, but I'm not sure as it relates to, is it clean or not clean? It's kind of left.
So it kind of comes down to, all right, do I drink milk that's directly from the cow, if you will?
Mhm.
Or if I prefer pasteurized, is it in my diet? Like, is it
Is
part,
that bad?
I mean, is it like acceptable to have it as part of it?
Yeah,
It's
or
really-
not have it.
It's
yeah.
really not very clear, is it?
Nope. No.
Annika, how about the unsweetened applesauce that you held up there?
Yeah, well, again, I think it really depends on the definition that you're using for clean.
Mhm.
If it means eating foods as close to the natural state as possible, then applesauce clearly, looks a lot different than what an apple looks like.
Mhm.
But I mean, to me, and I think some people said similarly in the comments, if it's just cooking down apples without adding anything else, any added sugar, I would consider that to be clean eating in my book. I mean, the ingredients literally just said apples. So
Butter. Yeah. I mean, I would agree with that too. I mean, the one thing you are doing is you're reducing the fiber because of the fact, right, that you're eliminating the skin and some of you're probably cooking it down, or at least some of the fiber. But as far as the clean eating aspect of it, it seems like it would fit into that category. Category.
Right.
Yeah. Yep.
All right. And then finally, Sandy, your thoughts on the whole grain bread.
Yeah, I think it was Annika who said earlier, some definitions of clean state that all grains are off limits, which would totally eliminate whole grains from your diet. And with whole grains being high in fiber, many containing omega-3s, which are so healthy, along with, you know, a lot of other great nutrients we get from things like whole grain bread. Not to mention, you know, whole grains versus refined grains being much more filling, much more satisfying. For me, I personally don't feel the need to give them up. I'm a phase 2 person, you know. In phase 1, of course, this would be a different point of view, but yeah, for me, they're part of my healthy diet.
Yeah. So it'd be hard to make that decision, right, Sandy? Like if you're going for clean, most would say no, and that's what people did. And so it's kind of hard to decide health benefits or, you know, by the definition of clean.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. When you look at all the healthy dietary patterns, they all include grains as one of the
whole grains. Yeah.
That should be in your diet.
Absolutely.
It's always.
And we do have whole grains with our multigrain cereal, you know, one cereal is 2 servings.
We have the whole grain medley, and we have the Fiesta chicken now. Both have whole grains in them.
Right.
All right. So, you know, just to summarize, I mean, basically everybody said this, but whether something is clean or not really depends upon the definition you use. So minimally, there's always going to be some confusion about what's clean. And that alone is a problem, right? If you're just not sure, you're just always like, you're basically back in that decision anxiety. And then if you run the risk of banning whole food groups, that might not be in your best interest health-wise. And also, let's not forget the point we made earlier that the words we use can imply a judgment, whether it's intentional or not. And maybe using a term like clean can be detrimental when you're not able to follow it, which, as we've just been talking about, could be really hard to follow a diet that's, quote, clean eating all the time. And that can lead to guilt and blame. And of course, that doesn't help anybody. We've been talking about that all night. So, you know, Sandy, just from you just kind of, let's talk a little bit about maybe a way around this whole idea of focusing on clean eating. And here we're going to be talking about phase 2.
Yeah. When you attempt to, I think clean eating is an attempt to eat healthy, right?
Yeah.
And so in true HMR fashion, a much more positive strategy is to embrace what we call a to-do approach, focusing on what we can do rather than what we shouldn't or can't do. And so the to-do approach, what that entails is, first of all, strategically using HMR foods, because they are so effective at helping us take a break from higher calorie foods in our culture, or another way we put it, the gap. So, you know, taking that on as something you can do to control your calories in. And then another positive strategy is eating lots of veggies and fruits. And whether you eat them raw or cook them or, you know, add them to other foods you're eating, you know, it's just a great to-do behavior that we can focus on. And then third, choosing lean proteins along with your veggies and fruits. Again, we're talking about phase 2, long-term weight management, health management, having those go-to lean proteins, you know, measured in the portion sizes that are applicable to that particular protein. We're talking like chicken, fish, turkey, you know, those vegetarian options like veggie burgers, tofu, right? Eggs, low-fat dairy. And then Another strategy, eating measured portions of grains, preferably whole grains, because your body does process them differently than refined grains. So the more of those we can incorporate, replace our refined grains with, the better off we're going to be health-wise. And then lastly, including some carefully measured healthy fats, things like olive oil, nuts, seeds, again, carefully measured and, really thoughtful additions to your diet. That's something that would enhance your health. So if I were to boil it down, essentially focusing on what to eat versus what not to eat is going to keep us in that positive mind frame of, keeping ourselves on that success cycle of eating. So, yeah.
Yeah. And when you're focusing on these foods, I think it's easier. It's never perfect, but it is easier to eat fewer of the other foods, the higher calorie foods, or you're more control of them because you're filling up on a lot of these other foods.
Yeah.
So let me step back. If anyone's just joined us, we're talking about some terms that can undermine people's efforts to stay on track with their weight loss or their weight management. And again, it's based on an article that we read from the Washington Post, where several dietitians identified the phrases that were their top offenders. The terms we've covered so far are good foods, bad foods, and clean eating. So now let's move on to our next term. And Jen, what's the next term?
All right. Are you guys ready? It is guilty pleasure. And so this one may be obvious because in terms of its negative impact, guilty pleasure, but I want to hear from all of you who are watching and maybe even watching after the fact. Do you have a reaction to this term, guilty pleasure? And why was guilty pleasure, do you think, included in this article of the terms or the words that dietitians would want to, get rid of that make them cringe? So again, do you have a reaction to this term? And why guilty pleasure was included in the article and what made the phrase made them cringe? So guilty pleasure. What are you all thinking about this?
Yeah.
About Netflix. Susan, Netflix.
Is that the name of a show right now?
Yeah, guilty pleasures. We may need to binge on that one.
I don't know that one.
Yeah. So any other thoughts or reactions to the term guilty pleasure? How about coaches, Annika, Nancy, Sandy?
Well, I would say guilty pleasure is another way of labeling foods as bad.
Right.
It's a setup for feeling guilty and blaming ourselves or feeling shameful with our food choices when it doesn't go as you wish. And it can just send you into kind of a negative cycle, a failure syndrome, as we call it, that prevents you. It's really hard to get out of sometimes, and it can prevent you from making, some different food choices. So, yeah.
And I think it's sad because even, let's say you're managing your calories and you're having a treat, maybe it's ice cream or cookie or whatever. If you associate all higher calorie foods as, again, not good or bad, or however, going back to that, and you feel guilt, like you don't enjoy it, right? If there's no way to enjoy that food, it's just going to be the whole time you're eating it, you can't even enjoy it because you're feeling guilty that you're even eating it in the first place. And that's a shame too, because I mean, food is, we need to eat and we want to enjoy what we're eating. And, certainly we want to have a lot of great recipes for our lower calorie foods that Sandy was talking about, but, we don't live on that alone, so I think even that can feel frustrating and cause you to never enjoy anything that you could enjoy.
Yeah. And Lori says it's counterproductive. Should we really have to feel guilty about having something pleasurable? I don't think so. Yeah, I don't think so. And that's what's great about phase 2 is because we learn how to balance it out. You know, phase one, the goal is to get it off, because we know what a slippery slope it could be. But there's a reason why in phase one, we do want to be more structured. But in phase two, the goal is not to eliminate all those things like my little white donuts. It's not that I can never, ever have them again. But how can we balance it out?
Yeah. Yeah, in phase two, we say no food is off limits, but the reality is for long-term weight management, we do need to be mindful of our calorie budgets, you know? So like Jen said, balancing those episodes of enjoying some of your favorite foods. So, you know, there could be some higher calorie foods we enjoy from time to time and really take pleasure in them, but having them daily might not be in your best interest for your weight and your health. Anyone have an example out? Any other coaches have an example of how you or someone you know kind of approaches this, enjoying some of your favorite higher calorie foods?
I think that I think in the past, maybe, you know, you have a good low calorie day, and I felt kind of guilty at night having a glass of wine, right? You know, that's a guilty pleasure. And, you know, I think the reality is it's something that's okay to be enjoyed in moderation. There's no need to feel guilt around it. Now, yes, if you were doing it every night, it can escalate your calories. But I think that's an example that, you know, I have felt guilt over in the past, you know. Yeah.
And then you don't really enjoy it. I mean,
right. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think considering the whole week overall, and if you do have something that you really want to enjoy it, but also know that there are some other things that you want to do, maybe on that day or even on the other days. Maybe that means that you're not going to enjoy, you know, some of those higher calorie things the next day too, but it may be more fruits and vegetables. Maybe you keep in your physical activity, and you know there's always a to do, so you're not really off track because you never got off track. It's just part of it.
We've got some people who are, you know, have been able to do that, like Gina. Hi, Gina's here. Hi, Gina.
Yay. Hi, Gina.
Food choices are a decision you make, not a good or bad thing to feel guilty about. And then Susan, who was on last week as well, my example is wine. I try to just have some when I go out on the weekend, but I budget around it.
Yeah.
And Pam said, you know, it's a no-win term, this guilty pleasure, but there are some things I know from trial and error that I can have, and some I know I can no longer eat. And I can relate to that. I know I have trigger foods that there are certain things, if I start eating, I have never been able to successfully stop eating. But I have other foods that I can't control. And those foods are, if they're in my environment, they're in very manageable portions, and not, you know, not big bags. So I think your environment makes a big difference here. What else we got here? Oh, Candace, all three of these terms hit my shame button, which is so undermining. Great. So Candace, I think that's the point of tonight, is to hopefully become aware of these and get them out of there. Get them out of there. Let's just see what Bob has. In phase two, I allow myself one visit to Del Taco a month, and I don't eat nearly as much as I did before HMR. So that's a great example, you know, and hopefully that you can enjoy that trip once a month. Having it, you know, probably a lot more than maybe when you were going every day, you know. Sometimes actually when you feel like you're in control and you're having it, you can do it even more. All right, so I think that was great. Let's move on to our fourth term. All right, you guys, so we've got one more to cover. So Annika, tell us what the fourth one is here.
Sure. Our last term is low carb or cutting carbs. And this one is unique because it really is, more than the other terms, I think, a matter of confusion. You know, people often use these terms, but don't fully understand what carbs are. So let me ask the audience, when you guys when people say they're cutting carbs, what foods do they typically mean? We could hear some examples in the comments.
Yeah, we're making you work tonight, so
Yeah.
you're getting a lot of finger exercise here.
Yeah. Having you pay attention, right?
We're burning calories on typing. So we're seeing pasta, sugar, bread. Keep this is great. Cutting carbs. What are the foods that they're thinking about? Pasta, bread.
A lot of bread.
Sugar.
Bread,
Yeah.
pasta, sugar. Those
Sugar,
are the
starches.
gotta do-
Yeah.
starches.
Yep.
Oh, so Susan brings up a point that people who cut carbs seem to not know that fruits, vegetables, and dairy have carbs.
Yeah.
So she, yeah,
Yeah. I love this, Lisa. Anything white.
anything white, yeah.
Pizza.
Yeah.
Great. Crackers, chips, candy. Yeah. So, again, these are some of the things that people think of. And, let's face it, there's some legitimate issues with a lot of these foods that you're listing, right? So, Annika, what's, one issue with these foods that most of them?
Yeah, well, most of the carb, examples, the pasta, the rice, the bread, they tend to come in really large portions. And it's something that we as a society have just accepted and become accustomed to needing to have these large portions, which, can be detrimental to our weight management when we're eating so much more than.
I mean, they're just a high calorie when you get to large portions.
Yeah. And whenever we go through, when folks are transitioning from phase 1 to phase 2, and we're going through those measured portions of whole grains, everyone's like, really? Because it's a half to a cup is a serving of whole grain, or potentially like one slice. And when you think back to anytime you ate rice or pasta, how many times did you just have a half a cup or got served a half a cup or a cup serving of yeah. And another challenge is they're often paired with higher calorie sauces, right?
Yeah.
And food, so meatballs, sausage. So that's another challenge with the carbs. Cheese, creamy sauces.
Yeah. So I mean, there are some legitimate carbs, if you will, that you do have to pay attention to as far as portion size and how they're eaten. But on the other hand, carbs can and should be part of a healthy diet, right, ladies?
Right.
Yeah. Fruits and vegetables, beans, legumes, those are all carbs, kind of like what Susan said, people seem to not know. And these are really important part of our program. When the average person talks about carbs, the chances are they're not thinking veggie fruits, but when you consider how many veggies and fruits make up such a large portion of our diet, it is high carb.
Yeah. And carbohydrates is a macronutrient along with protein and fat, and those three things, we all need them. They're part of our healthy diet. But I mean, ladies, you can see where the concern comes from, right? Because, those higher calorie foods, like we've heard mentioned, the cookies, the candy, the crackers, those types of things are higher in carbohydrate and often labeled bad carbs, good carbs, but we're back to the good and bad again. But we, again, don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. There is value in, good quality carbohydrates. Absolutely.
Yeah, they really are an excellent form of usable energy, right? And in appropriate portions, they are a part of an overall healthy diet. In fact, the latest dietary guidelines for Americans, and this is the most recent 2020 to 2025, state that carbs should make up at least half of our diet. But again, I think they're focusing more on the complex, fruits, vegetables, grains, the whole grains.
Yeah.
And I know you guys, when we have clients who have talked about potentially going on a low carb or cutting carbs, they really talk about how they don't have much energy. And that on our program, they feel energized within the first several days, like first week of doing the program, they have more energy. And it's because, carbs are our energy source. So, yeah.
That's so interesting. When we had the people on with Dara who's watching tonight, one of the women there she and her daughter had been on a low carb diet, and she said basically they tell them not to exercise because they have no energy, so they only exercise, and that something seems wrong about that.
Right.
Yeah.
So, all right, ladies, I think that brings us to the end of the event. We've gone through all 4 terms that we were talking about, and we've covered some of the issues related to these terms and in general. So again, we covered good foods, bad foods, not a good thing to have in your repertoire. Let's go for lower calorie, higher calorie, and get a little more empirical. Clean eating. And we talked about the fact that the definition isn't very clear. So already there's a lot of confusion, not to mention just how judgmental that sounds when you're not able to do 100% clean eating, and you may eliminate some food groups, which also can be a problem. Guilty pleasures. Again, then you're worried, the idea that you never can enjoy like tasty food again. That's very sad. We don't want that to happen. And then again, the idea of cutting carbs, again, that's very confusing. So you have to kind of know what carbs are better to cut and what ones aren't. And even for things like, and you guys have mentioned this, the things like the pasta and the rice and grains, measuring portions and then having them with low calorie or lower calorie sauces and accompanied by lots of fruits and vegetables allows you to have them, but in a manageable portion and in a healthy way.
Yeah.
So, let's face it, weight management is hard enough. So using terms or phrases that can have you feel badly, judging yourself, or not enjoying the pleasures of eating, they just aren't helpful. So we hope this conversation has raised awareness of how even little things like the words we use can undermine our efforts to lose weight or to keep off the weight that you've already lost. So, tell us a comment. Tell us if there's anything that you're taking away from this conversation. It'll be helpful for us to hear. It'll certainly be helpful for people if you're watching this after the fact. Add your comments in. Hopefully we can give everybody a chance to have less self-negative talk.
Yeah.
So, and as always, we so appreciate you being here with us tonight. And for those of you who are watching it afterward, we do this for you. And it's so nice that you participate and are here and joining us. So we're back to weekly schedules. So we'll see you next week at the same time. So good night, everybody.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.